Looking after people is one of the biggest challenges and responsibilities in retail. In this episode of Empowering Retail, we're joined by Workplace Support to unpack the wellbeing and mental health services Retail NZ members can access and how the right support can make a real difference to both teams and business owners. Kia ora, I'm Carolyn Young, Chief Executive of Retail NZ, and today I'm joined by Sarah Wood, who's the Wellbeing Supporter with our partner Workplace Support. Kia ora, Sarah, and welcome.
Kia ora, Carolyn. Thanks for having me.
Look, it's so great to have you here, and I guess to start with, could you just maybe outline for everyone, what wellbeing services Retail NZ members have access to, and when
Hmm.
someone should reach out for their support?
Absolutely. So members can access counselling sessions, and this kind of support is intended to cover both personal and work-related challenges because, as I'll get into later, both have an impact on our well-being and how we, or sometimes if we, show up to work. So some of the common personal challenges that would be a good reason to reach out include having ongoing anxiety, stress, or depression that doesn't sort of lift after a week or two, serious illness, grief or loss, family challenges, relationship issues, financial cost of living, that's a big one at the moment for a lot of people. Any health or well-being challenges and work-related challenges might be, managing workplace change. Our brains don't like change. We tend to find that really difficult. Preparing for retirement, that's a huge identity shift, a huge life change that often requires a little bit of extra support. Work pressures that you feel like you're not coping with very well, and workplace relationships is another big area that can really derail us if that's not going well. And one thing I will say is that we know early intervention is better than waiting until you've reached a crisis point. So I would just encourage anyone listening to this who is struggling or who potentially feels like they're just barely holding it together to just reach out and get support, because you'll be so surprised at how much better you'll feel just by talking to someone who is a neutral party and trying to really listen and support you with moving forward in a positive direction.
Look, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because when we think about our staff, we often know quite a lot about them and we know what's happening. And so we would know if somebody might have passed away, and we potentially might know if there's been a relationship breakup. We know there's currently financial pressures in play. And so you often, as a manager or a business owner, you will have some sense of whether your staff are responding differently, if they're a bit withdrawn, any of those sorts of things. And I guess if we think about it, Sarah, from an employer's perspective, why is offering assistance to staff through the counselling service beneficial, even though there's some cost for the business owner?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Well, one of the first things that comes to mind is that, as much as you might care about your staff and show that you care and want to support them, this way they're getting sort of professional help. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we do just need a bit of a feeling of support from someone who knows us, but other times we actually need to see someone who can give us the tools we need to get us moving forward in a positive direction. The other thing I'll flag is that obviously when an employee's well-being is low or their mental health is poor, this affects their motivation and ability to function well. And at work, this is going to affect their ability to focus and be productive. It's potentially going to affect their relationships at work. So there can be more conflict or negative behaviours toward others, including your customers, which is a problem if it's not dealt with. It can affect turnover and tension. So, replacing staff is expensive, not to mention the loss of organisational memory and the cost of training and bringing on someone new. And then it can also lead to more absenteeism, so days off, or
Yeah.
presenteeism, which is when someone's physically at work but they're not mentally engaged. So I would also say that when employees know they have access to a service like this, it sends a clear message that you do actually care about them. And that can do wonders for you in terms of, having the loyalty of your employees. It's good for your reputation, and it's good for engagement. And the final thing I will say about it is that under the Health and Safety Act, mental health is considered one of the things that we need to be considering. So, and this is going to become more and more of a focus with time. And, so having some kind of plan in place, ideally preventative, around mental health and well-being is helping you meet your obligations under the Health and Safety Act as well.
And what we know, especially for small retail businesses that have one or two or three stores, look, most of your staff will be on the shop floor and most of them will be engaging with your customers. And customer service is so important in retail. We know that it drives 70% of sales are driven through customer service. We know what it's like when we're not feeling 100%. And so we know that if our staff aren't feeling 100%, they won't be as motivated and won't be as successful. And that does impact your bottom line, I guess, is the key thing. And what you've just outlined there. And look, in terms of workplace support and for Retail NZ members wanting to access that service, the first thing you do is you call our advice line on 0800 472 472 and talk to Yev. And then what's going to happen from there, Yev's going to give you a code. But can you let our members know, what do they do once they've got that code? How do they
Mm.
make sure that they can access those services?
Absolutely. So once you've got your code, you can contact us through our 0800 number and just give us the code. Let us know that you'd like to access one of your sessions and give us kind of a general idea of what you might be struggling with. Nothing specific or identifiable, but just, I'm going through a rough patch at home or whatever it is, so that we can kind of match you to the right counsellor and you can get the appropriate support that you need. And then from there, we use the access code to send an invoice directly to the member so that they've got, all of that information for themselves and can pay their bill.
And just to reiterate, all of the conversations that you have with workplace support are confidential, and whatever you're talking about is treated with utmost privacy and really well protected. So don't think that anyone else is going to know what you're talking about, only those that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you and to hear more about how workplace support can support retailers and their staff.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So, look, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to visit www.workplacesupport.co.nz to find out more. This was part of our Empowering Retail series, your go-to short, actionable resources to take your business to the next level. Until next time, ka kite anō. Bye for now.